Greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Perfect Society. I'm Ulrich Hoffman, and this is the stream. Earth is not sustainable. Manned space travel is impossible. So what do I have planned for you all in this broadcast? First, let's switch to the first article. I have a couple of articles. Why manned interstellar travel is impossible on actforlibraries.org. Space travel is impossible on the unexpected cosmology.com. Space travel is impossible, and that's a provable fact. And the next one, top 10 long-term space exploration problems we have yet to solve. This is on listverse.com. The Nazi flying saucers on teslaresearch.jimdofree.com. Nazi UFOs on Wiki. And that's it. Let me first get to the reasons why manned space travel is impossible with the technology, the spaceships they pretend they did it with. The NASA Apollo moon landings are fake for reasons. Manned space travel may be impossible for 4 reasons. 1. The vacuum in space. 2. Space debris. 3. Extreme temperatures -200 to +200 Celsius. And 4. The 2 Van Allen belts. So basically, when you look at the average temperature on Mars, that's about -63 Celsius. So that's way too cold for people to be able to hang around there. Let's see if this spacesuit is working better. Kind of invisible. Okay, so I plan to just read these articles, and comments are welcome. People can also debate me. They can Skype ProLogic999, and if I don't have my Skype on, it's on at the moment. But if I don't have it on, then I can call you back later, then we can do a broadcast. So let's start just reading this article on actforlibraries.org.
Why manned interstellar travel is impossible physical. Why manned interstellar travel is impossible physical science. Several centuries ago, manned flight through Earth's atmosphere was plausible, but technically impossible. Today, the same can be said for manned interstellar travel. It might become possible through some sort of as yet unimagined invention in 10 years, or 100, but don't hold your breath. The distances involved, the demands it would put on the human body, and the cost of any hypothetical manned spacecraft are all formidable challenges. Each of these, and other problems, must be solved, or else manned interstellar travel will remain impossible. It's too far. Distances in space are vast. So far, manned spacecraft have made it as far away as the Moon, a little under 250,000 miles. In contrast, the planet Mars, long assumed to be the next target for manned spacecraft, is 50 million miles away at its closest point, and the Sun unit, O, equal to 93 million miles, in the other direction. In contrast, Alpha Centauri, the nearest star to our own Sun, is over 25 trillion miles away. The fastest human spacecraft yet launched would take millennia to traverse that distance. Clearly, the technology we now use to meander around the solar system is simply impractical for interstellar travel. There are a variety of techniques for accelerating to extremely high speeds, and thus crossing the interstellar medium in less time, perhaps even in several decades. However, the most plausible of these largely implausible designs works only for small and lightweight spacecraft, such as massive cells built to manipulate the solar wind coupled with some sort of large microwave transmitter in Earth orbit. Even if this were to work for a small unmanned probe, however, it could not work for a manned interstellar spacecraft. The problem is equivalent to that faced in traveling to the Moon and Mars, except on a far grander scale. Manned spacecraft must be orders of magnitude larger and more complex, since they must contain all of the apparatus and space necessary for humans to survive inside them.
Well, I had cleaned up some tabs, so the most important articles: the sun will destroy Earth sooner than you might think, meaning Earth is unsustainable anyhow. This is on sciencealert.com and the original is on businessinsider.com.au, Australia. I wanted to start with those, but that means we need real space travel and not fake space travel. If we are to survive, we must colonize the universe. So we'll get to that later. Let's first read this one and then I'll read the sun will destroy Earth sooner than you might think. And the question is, how accurate are their predictions? Is it possible that the Earth burns up in the last rays of the sun before the sun becomes a black or white dwarf star? Could that happen anytime soon, basically, within our lifetimes, or is it certainly more than 1 million years away from us? That's the question, and how can they scientifically predict that accurately is the question, because it can be wishful thinking, of course. They don't want to burn up in the last rays of the sun, so they hope it's very far away from us, obviously. And that can lead to a biased opinion about this matter. So let's continue reading. I have a lot of dropped frames. I don't know how that's possible. I didn't change anything. So what's happening? CPU and memory is okay. So that can be the problem. There must be something else. Perhaps virus scanner doing stuff. I'll have to check on it.
Adding more size and mass means that the spacecraft needs more fuel to reach the same speeds. This fuel itself has mass, which requires still more fuel simply to cancel out the increased fuel supplies, and so on. A manned interstellar spacecraft would almost certainly have to be so large that it could not even be launched into orbit from Earth. It would have to be constructed there, using supplies flown from Earth or, more likely, the Moon and nearby asteroids. Technologically speaking, therefore, manned interstellar travel is simply impossible for the foreseeable future. How will we survive? The second set of problems are biological ones. Space travel is not kind to the human body. This is true even close to the Earth, where astronauts are at greater risk of radiation exposure as well as the effects of prolonged time in weightlessness, causing muscular atrophy. These risks are present in varying amounts whether one travels to Alpha Centauri or simply into orbit, although it's not entirely clear at the moment whether long-distance space travel would result in greater or lesser radiation problems. Both of these are solved in science fiction by technology like shielding and artificial gravity, which we do not have. Interstellar travel, however, poses additional special problems, which is why, for the moment, manned interstellar travel is impossible. Assuming for the moment, and it's a safe assumption, that the first interstellar travelers will not have the benefit of science fiction technology like the warp drive, they will also have to deal, in varying amounts, with two other serious problems, the effects of high acceleration, and the effects of aging. Unfortunately, these two are inversely related, meaning there's no getting around them. Any plan to reduce the amount of time human travelers would age, means they will have to travel at high speeds, subjecting them to potentially dangerous g-forces as a result of high acceleration and, at the other end of the trip, deceleration. The time in between, at the spacecraft's cruising speed, would be free of these forces. However, if the spacecraft travels at a slower speed, then they will spend potentially decades more time in space. Either way you look at it, there's a serious chance that manned interstellar travel would require multiple generations of humans to live on board, which leads to the space and fuel problems in the previous section. The leading alternative in science fiction is some form of stasis, or prolonged unconsciousness. Alfred C. Clarke's 2001 and 2010 both make use of this for travel within the solar system, to Jupiter. The technology to do this reliably is not currently available. Until it is, it's probably a safe bet that manned interstellar travel is impossible. Who will pay for it? The last and perhaps most easily resolvable reason that manned interstellar travel is impossible is that there are very few people willing to foot the bill for it. Of course, we're not exactly sure how much it would cost just yet, since most of the fuels and technologies necessary haven't even been invented. However, this is a question worth asking. Consider, right now, NASA fights desperately for the funding to send unmanned probes the comparatively paltry distances to nearby planets, and generally has difficulty sending anything of substance beyond our closest neighbor, Mars. The problems are even more severe when one considers the problem of manned spacecraft. In general, these are orders of magnitude more expensive than their unmanned counterparts, because they have to be far larger, to hold the crew, and far more rigorously tested. NASA is reluctant to lose an unmanned probe, but recognizes that accidents happen. Since the accidents of the Apollo missions, NASA has not been so willing to risk manned crews, the tragedies of the Challenger and Columbia notwithstanding, and puts far more effort into testing those designs. With all the costs averaged out, every single space shuttle flight currently costs about $1 billion. And the International Space Station has an overall budget of around $100 billion. Neither of these is designed to go beyond low Earth orbit. A manned interstellar flight project would probably require most of our current economic output to be spent on research and construction costs. Right now, cost is one of the major reasons why the Obama administration is scaling back NASA's manned spacecraft plans. Yet compared to the challenges of manned interstellar travel, NASA's space plans were pretty amateurish. The Orion spacecraft would be capable of returning men to the Moon, and one day taking us to Mars. If we can't afford to send manned craft to the Moon, it's a safe bet we can't afford to send them to other stars. For the most frustrating of reasons, manned interstellar travel is impossible so long as no one is willing to pay for it. Related posts.
Well, I'm working on the buffering dropped frames problem basically. I changed some settings. But okay, let's just read the other thing. I'd have to check what it looks like, if this is viewable. And perhaps I'll redo this broadcast. But I changed some settings for another platform. And I have to change them back. I've written down what I've done. But I cannot find change zero latency from 0 to 1. Where do I find zero latency in OBS settings? But I'm working on it. So now let's go to businessinsider.com.au, the original article.
The sun will destroy Earth sooner than you might think. The sun will destroy Earth sooner than you might think. Ali Sundermere, Sept 19, 2016, 5 o'clock a.m. Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, LinkedIn, email. Kevin Gill. There are plenty of ways Earth could go. It could smash into another planet, be swallowed by a black hole, or get pummeled to death by asteroids. There's really no way to tell which doomsday scenario will be the cause of our planet's demise. Share this is a modal window. This video is restricted from playing in your current geographic region. Error code, player_ERR_GO_ restricted session ID, 2021-05-25:F745F80CF3C60DCC649928BF player element ID, BrightGo video 1,431,897,303. OK, close modal dialogue. But one thing is for sure, even if Earth spends the rest of its eons escaping alien attacks, dodging space rocks, and avoiding a nuclear apocalypse, there will come a day when our own sun will eventually destroy us. This process won't be pretty, as Business Insider's video team recently illustrated when they took a look at what will happen to Earth when the sun finally does die out in a blaze of glory. And as Gillian Scudder, an astrophysicist at the University of Sussex, explained to Business Insider in an email, the day might come sooner than we think. Bleeding Earth dry, the sun survives by burning hydrogen atoms into helium atoms in its core. In fact, it burns through 600 million tons of hydrogen every second. VGIFI. And as the sun's core becomes saturated with this helium, it shrinks, causing nuclear fusion reactions to speed up, which means that the sun spits out more energy. In fact, for every billion years the sun spends burning hydrogen, it gets about 10% brighter. VGIFI. And while 10% might not seem a lot, that difference could be catastrophic for our planet. The predictions for what exactly will happen to Earth as the sun brightens over the next billion years are pretty uncertain, Scudder said. But the general gist is that the increasing heat from the sun will cause more water to evaporate off the surface instead. The water then acts as a greenhouse gas, which traps more incoming heat, which speeds up the evaporation. Before it ever even runs out of hydrogen, the sun's high-energy light will bombard our atmosphere and split apart the molecules and allow the water to escape as hydrogen and oxygen, eventually bleeding Earth dry of water, Scudder said. Kevin Gillen. It doesn't end there. A 10% increase in brightness every billion years means that 3.5 billion years from today, the sun will shine almost 40% brighter, which will boil Earth's oceans, melt its ice caps, and strip all of the moisture from its atmosphere. VGIFI. Our planet, once bursting with life, will become unbearably hot, dry, and barren, like Venus. Kevin Gilland. As the steady thump of time drums down on our existence, the situation will only get more bleak. The sun's death rattle. All good things eventually come to an end. Every book has a final chapter, every pizza has one last bite, and every person has a dying breath. And one day, about 4 or 5 billion years from now, the sun will burn through its last gasp of hydrogen and start burning helium instead. Once hydrogen has stopped burning in the core of this, formally left the main sequence and can be considered a red giant, Scudder said. It will then spend about 1 billion years expanding and burning helium in its core, with a shell around it where hydrogen is still able to fuse into helium. ISO 0927A1, ISO, L. Call SATA. As the sun sheds its outer layers, its mass will decrease, loosening its gravitational hold on all of the planets. So all of the planets orbiting the sun will drift a little further away. When the sun becomes a full-blown red giant, Scudder said, its core will get Scudder said, its core will get extremely hot and dense while its outer layer expands. A lot. VGIFI. Its atmosphere will stretch out. Its atmosphere will stretch out to Mars' current orbit, swallowing Mercury and Venus. VGIFI. Although the sun's atmosphere will reach Mars' orbit, Mars will escape, as it will have wandered past the reach of the sun's expanding atmosphere. Earth, on the other hand, has two options, either escape the expanding sun or be consumed by it. But even if our planet slips out of the sun's reach, the intense temperatures will burn it to a sad, dead crisp. In either case, our planet will be pretty close to the surface of the red giant, which is not good for life, Scudder said. Kevin Gill. Although more massive stars can begin another shell of fusing heavier elements when this helium is exhausted, the sun is too feeble to generate the pressure needed to begin that layer of fusion, Scudder explained. So when the sun's helium dries up, it's pretty much all downhill from there. From red giant to white dwarf, once the sun has emptied its fuel reserves, it will become unstable and start to pulse. VGIFI. With every pulse, the sun will shrug off layers of its outer atmosphere until all that's left is a cold, heavy core, surrounded by a planetary nebula. X-ray, NASA/CXC/RID/J. Kastner et al., optical, NASA, STC. With each passing day this core, known as a white dwarf, will cool and fade hopelessly out of existence as if it didn't once host the most lively planet ever discovered in the sweeping canvas of the universe. But who knows? Maybe the aliens will get to us first. Now watch, here's what will happen when our sun dies.
This was an abrupt end. Did we read the whole article already? When our sun dies. What will happen? Oh, that's a video we can watch. I'd have to reload the page. So my question to you all is it understandable what I'm saying and what's read? The stream's current bitrate, 1102 kilobyte per second, is lower than the recommended bitrate. We recommend that you use a stream bitrate of 4500 kilobyte per second. I've changed that bitrate, but apparently I'd have to restart the stream for this. Where do I see? Oh, 317, 996 kilobytes per second. 1.2. So let's just go to the next article. Top 10 long-term space exploration problems we have yet to solve, according to Listverse.com. So we definitely don't need fake space travel. I think that there is a real international space station. Some think it is a hologram. That it's possible there are no people on there, simply impossible. Perhaps it is possible with artificial gravity, the man-made saucers I'll get to later. But let me know if I have to redo this stream or if it's understandable. Let's take a listen. So I'm going to mute this for a second, checking out if it's understandable. Well, I think it's just a video being affected, so I'll continue this stream and read the next article, listverse.com. Boom, there it is.
Top 10 long-term space exploration problems we have yet to solve by Oliver Taylor. Everyone is excited about the possibility of a manned mission to Mars. There is even speculation that the first humans will land on Mars in the 2030s. Well, that could be true. But it is actually harder than it looks. A manned mission to Mars could remain a pipe dream considering current technology and political trends, especially in the United States. There are also several problems over which we have no control.
When the temperature on average is -63 Celsius, is it even worth considering going to Mars? And that's just an indication, it's totally fake. All the manned space travel is fake. Of course, satellites are real, the Earth is spherical, and they may have the flat earthers to cover up sort of that the Apollo moon landings are fake, which is proven by the fact that there cannot be sound on the moon, there cannot be sound in a vacuum. And I've covered that in previous broadcasts. So we know the Apollo moon landings are fake. So it's good to study that, to know this with certainty, so that you know what you're talking about. And there are also others who have reported about this. I made a top 10 of things that prove the Apollo moon landings are fake. So if you search around a bit, then you can find the information you need. No sound in a vacuum, NASA, Apollo moon landing hoax, Apollo moon landings hoax. So Apollo didn't exist either. There are no deities, entities, miracles don't exist. There are no 5 fictional places we can go after we die. Heaven, hell, bottomless pit, resurrection, reincarnation don't exist. But we need to create that perfect society and control aging. That's why it is important, I think.
This often involves our bodies and the conditions on Mars itself. It seems like Mars is out to kill the first humans who set foot on it, an opinion shared by several people including Elon Musk, who may revolutionize space travel. Nevertheless, we will keep our fingers crossed. Tain money photo credit, futurism and mission to Mars. This was revealed in July 2007. NASA's chief of human spaceflight revealed that the agency does not receive enough funding from the U.S. government to make NASA's first Mars landing scheduled for the 2030s realistic. NASA, private space agencies, and nonprofits give vastly different figures when estimating the cost of a manned mission to Mars. This ranges from $1 trillion spread over 25 years, as proposed by the nonprofit Mars Institute, to $100 billion spread over 30 to 40 years, as proposed by NASA. However, NASA cannot afford their estimate. NASA received $19.5 billion in funding for the 2017 fiscal year. That amount seems like a lot until we realize that the agency splits this money between several space missions, programs, and research. Considering current trends, NASA's funding drought is unlikely to end anytime soon. Its budget has only grown by a measly 2%. 1. 9 Loneliness photo credit. National Geographic. Humans are social creatures and often require interaction. Become a problem during an expedition to Mars. A few years ago, researchers had a group of people live in an isolated habitat in the Arizona desert for a considerable period of time. They noted that some participants soon suffered from depression and mood swings. Some also became hostile and mostly did not talk to each other for 18 months. Their few interactions were limited to brief conversation. Although the team later had psychologists to help them, astronauts on Mars will not have the same privilege. The tests have made some researchers question future plans to send just 2 astronauts to Mars in a single spacecraft. The astronauts will probably become bored, depressed, and could even start to dislike each other, which could lead to their doom. This is unlikely to happen if the personalities. 2. 8 The dust storm photo credit. NASA. In January 2004, the NASA space rover Opportunity landed on Mars for a 90-day mission, in Mars Days, to find evidence of water on the red planet. Opportunity completed its assignment almost immediately and went on to complete more missions over 15 years. Its surprising survival streak ended in June 2018 when it lost contact with NASA during a dust storm. Opportunity often hibernated at night because it ran on solar power. However, it probably switched to its backup battery after the dust from the storm covered its solar panels. Opportunity ran on its batteries until it died. NASA fears a repeat incident could happen with the solar-powered stations used by astronauts on Mars. Mars experiences 2 types of dust storms. The first and commonest are the regular storms that could cover large swathes of land as wide as a whole continent on Earth. Thankfully, these storms are light and only last for a few weeks. The other type, like the one that killed Opportunity, is the rarer but stronger global dust storm that covers the entire planet. Global dust storms occur every 5.5 Earth years, 3 Mars years, and could last for months. Besides covering the solar panels, they could also block sunlight from reaching Mars, which could put the stations and astronauts in jeopardy. Thankfully, Mars dust storms are unlikely to cause serious physical damage to the stations. They are more of a breeze than a storm despite the name. 3. 7 Food photo credit. UPI.com. A study by PhD students at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, revealed that a human colony on Mars could die of starvation. The group based their study on the manned mission planned by Mars One. The organization wants to set up a human colony of 25 to 40 individuals on Mars by 2025. Food will be habitat of the colonists. An MIT study to simulate that habitat has revealed that the astronauts will need to choose between getting enough food or oxygen. The food and oxygen levels in the habitat are linked because plants produce oxygen as a byproduct. On Mars, that oxygen will be used to sustain the lives of the astronauts. The MIT study revealed that the plants will produce excessive oxygen if they produce enough food to feed everyone in the habitat. This will clearly be detrimental to the lives of the astronauts because breathing excessive amounts of oxygen could kill them. However, the oxygen levels would be balanced if the plants produce lesser amounts of food, which would not be enough to feed everyone. The researchers say that this problem could be solved by developing an oxygen removal system, which does not exist for now. 4. 6 spacecraft photo credit, BusinessInsider.com. The race to land the first human on Mars is currently led by NASA, SpaceX, and Blue Origin. In fact, all three organizations already have spacecraft that could take us to Mars. Use dangerous fuels and would take too long to get to Mars from a human safety perspective. NASA is trying to solve this by developing the Space Launch System that uses liquid hydrogen and some other chemicals for fuel. SpaceX is considering altering its spacecraft to use liquid methane for fuel, while Blue Origin is settling for liquid hydrogen. However, some still doubt whether these new spaceships and fuels will get us to Mars. 5-1 is Chris Hadfield, a former NASA astronaut, who likened traveling to Mars, in even the latest spaceship in a canoe. Hadfield believes that the dangers of space and the unpredictability of the spaceships will kill most astronauts long before they land on Mars. Curiously, this opinion is shared by SpaceX CEO, Elon Musk, who once mentioned that the first manned Mars mission will probably lead to death. 5. Surgery as the possibility of long-term manned space missions to the Moon and even Mars becomes a reality. Scientists have started to grapple with the problems posed by performing surgery in space. The unique environment of space means sick astronauts are likelier to die of minor wounds and infections there than on Earth. Astronauts sent to the International Space Station, ISS, are often trained to perform certain medical procedures like administering injections, stitching wounds, and even extracting a tooth. They return to Earth on a spacecraft permanently docked at the ISS if they have more severe medical issues. This is because the sick bay on the ISS is no better than a first aid kit. Even if the sick bay rose to the same standard at Earth, which it does not, the lack of gravity would be a real challenge. Among other problems, blood from the wound or surgical incision could float and obstruct the view of the doctor. Worse, it could contaminate the entire cabin. Also, anesthesia does not work as well as on Earth, which means lots of pain for the astronaut. These problems could be worse on long-term space explorations to the Moon and Mars. One suggestion is to use robot surgeons controlled in real time by human doctors on Earth. While this could work on the Moon, it would be impossible on Mars where information takes 20 minutes to reach Earth and vice versa. 6. 4 Mars toxic dust photo credit, newscientist.com. Mars is filled with toxic the red planet. Mars dust exists as round, fine, electrically charged silicate particles that will stick to astronauts' suits. The dust will be difficult to remove, raising concerns that it could get into the astronaut's base and clog crucial instruments and systems including water purifiers and air filters. This could be deadly because the fine silicate particles could seep into the lungs where it will react with water to form harmful chemicals.
So another thing, Nikola Tesla's radiant energy patent, and then the question is, what type of radiation would they be using when it would take 20 minutes for the wave to reach Mars, basically? That's I think if they'd use scalar technology, the radiant energy patent of Tesla, then it could be in less than a second. Some scalar waves travel faster than the speed of light, according to Formula 10 Colonel Tom Bearden.
The effect of the dust becomes worse when we realize that it contains gypsum and perchlorates. Gypsum is not dangerous on its own, but long-term exposure could cause eye, skin, and lung problems. Perchlorates could cause thyroid gland problems. 7. Exposure to space elements. Photo credit, useittoday.com. Space is filled with dangerous cosmic rays and irregular solar storms that could cause intense radiation. Scientists predict that astronauts traveling to Mars will be exposed to radiation levels up to 20% more than they will ever receive during their lifetimes on Earth. This intense radiation could cause heart, lung, and eye problems as well as neurological disorders and even cancer. This could be a huge problem because a one-way trip to Mars could last 6 months.
Yeah, of course you have the 2 deadly belts of radiation astronauts have to travel through to get to the moon even. And they've recently shown in a study that the people who fly in kerngekozen airplanes, passenger jets, have a higher cancer risk because they're more exposed to that space radiation filtered out by the Earth's atmosphere, etc. So radiation is definitely one of the 4 things that may make manned space travel impossible.
Solar storms are also unpredictable, which makes.
But that's solvable with the Tesla plasma shield, and perhaps the vacuum is also solvable with artificial gravity, and so you'd have to look at the technology that's secret that we have currently, and then see if that would allow for space travel to become a reality, manned space travel.
The situation worse. One solution is to develop a spacecraft that could get astronauts to Mars much faster. However, astronauts are not free from these radiation risks even when they get to Mars. 8. Although Earth's atmosphere shields us from dangerous radiation, Mars's atmosphere does not provide the same protection. Scientists propose to solve this by covering the human habitat on Mars with a thick anti-solar storm material just like the shielding on parts of the ISS. Others propose that humans will be protected from the radiation if they live in any of Mars's numerous lava tube caves instead. 2. Our bodies cannot cope. Photo credit, NASA. Human bodies have a hard time adjusting to the zero gravity levels experienced in the nearby ISS. This would become even worse during and after a trip to faraway Mars. Astronauts would have to cope with 3 different gravitational fields during the voyage to Mars. Astronauts will experience the first gravitational field here on Earth, before and after the trip. It is the regular one we are used to. The second is the zero gravity that astronauts experience while traveling the distance between Earth and Mars. The third is the gravitational field on Mars, which is 1/3 the gravity on Earth. Moving between gravitational fields causes a distortion in our senses of balance and movement. It also affects the coordination between our eyes, head, and hands. The lower gravity levels outside Earth will cause astronauts to lose valuable bone density. This makes their bones susceptible to breakage when they return to Earth. The lower gravity level outside Earth will also cause body fluids to escape into the head. This could cause a myriad of problems including kidney stones, dehydration, loss of calcium, and eye problems. Drugs would have reduced the effects except that they work differently in space.
So this is on samandajolkuluk.com. And it shows how to become invisible, teleport, create an anti-gravity spacecraft, and time travel with coils, basically. And teleportation is done with an XYZ coil, which creates a 4th-dimensional field coupled to target objects. So that could be a viable way to space travel. Of course, you'd have to be able to sustain yourself on the other planet and do proper calculations because the Earth is rotating and the other planet is probably rotating as well, etc. but that may be a possibility in theory. So I don't know if this is factual, but people can check out the page for themselves. Perhaps I can add it to the description, which already has the other articles. Perhaps I forgot some, I will add them later after this broadcast finishes.
9. Won the return trip photo credit, National Geographic. Using current technology, an expedition to Mars will be a one-way trip because astronauts who travel to Mars will be unable to return to Earth. While NASA is already developing the Mars Ascent Vehicle, MAV, to make a return trip possible, the technology is not without its own problems. When completed, the MAV will weigh 18 tons and will carry an extra 33 tons of fuel to take off from Mars. This massive weight means that it will be unable to land safely on Mars due to the planet's thin atmosphere, which could make the MAV burn up in the atmosphere or slam straight into the ground. For comparison, the heaviest thing we have landed on Mars is the Curiosity rover, which weighs just 1 ton. NASA intends to solve this by reducing the weight of the MAV and developing an inflatable heat shield that will slow the craft's speed during its descent to Mars. The MAV will have a minimalist interior and might not even have seats. However, the astronauts will not be standing all the way back to Earth. Instead, they will be transported to the Earth Return Vehicle, ERV, which will orbit Mars and return them to Earth. The ERV was also created to reduce weight. Instead of making a single spacecraft that will take off from Mars and bring the astronauts back to Earth, NASA will create a two-part system consisting of the MAV and the ERV. The MAV will take off from Mars's surface and transport the astronauts to the ERV, which will bring them back to Earth. Scientists will also reduce the weight of the MAV by having it create its fuel from Mars's atmosphere. The MAV will extract methane, carbon and hydrogen, and oxygen, which it needs to make its fuel, from the underground water and the abundant carbon dioxide, CO2, in Mars's atmosphere. Read about more space problems to be overcome on 10 obstacles astronauts must overcome on a voyage to Mars and 10 ways your Mars trip will be more uncomfortable than you think.
Not a word about the temperature on Mars, average temperature of -63 Celsius. So let's hop to the wiki article. Thank you Listverse for the interesting story. Nazi UFOs, something that they already landed on the moon, etc. But that's probably conspiracy theory, so perhaps these saucers can only travel around Earth as well. There's also an interesting one on Universal Peace. .jimdo.com, and then when we scroll to the end of the page, the bottom of the page, then we see these Cancer scalar orbs making illegal crop circles. They claim they're unidentified flying objects, but clearly they're scalar orbs. And also the Foo Fighter flying next to the Concorde is one of these light balls. Some call them Foo Fighters. And then there's the Taiwan Pyramid UFO, which you can see right here. It's a pyramid-shaped UFO, and this is a real news channel. I verified that. Doesn't prove that the material is real, and this video should still be available on YouTube. $1.5 million views on Auroratica. Another name for Lucifer, basically. Anyway, let's see the material. I'm not seeing it yet. Also, a strange amount of lightning, and then there we see that pyramid-shaped UFO, perhaps a pyramid-shaped man-made flying saucer, and that it is upside down makes sense, because then you can watch out, then you have a better view of Earth. If it would be with the point upward, so to speak, then you wouldn't be able to see what happens underneath the spacecraft, and you'd be looking, you wouldn't have a view as good as with the point pointing towards Earth, basically. So perhaps my idea was that it's charging itself with that lightning, and that could be created with the ionospheric heaters that are also modifying our jet stream. We have temperatures way too cold for the time of the year in the Netherlands, perhaps in Texas as well. I saw a video of somebody freezing something on his balcony or whatever. It's totally weird. Begun probably 2049, based on what I have seen online. So solar activity drives the climate and the amount of CO2. Some people are lying about it, and you need to look at centennial climate change to prove that. You cannot see it when you look at a period of 11 years. But that's another story. Wiki article. And they may have a secret base in Antarctica. Perhaps the reason they have closed Antarctica for people who are not scientists. In Queen Maudland. And they may have Project Bluebeam, a fake alien invasion. And they can reduce the global population to 500 million. Say it was done by the aliens, and that they finally defeated the aliens. And that they now have wonderful new scalar technology or radiant energy technology or whatever. And there could also be an EMP tied to that. So then only things or an EMP protected hard drive would survive data.
In ufology, conspiracy theory, science fiction, memes or stories have circulated linking UFOs to Nazi Germany. The German UFO theories describe supposedly successful attempts to develop advanced aircraft or spacecraft prior to and during World War II, and further assert the post-war survival of these craft in secret underground bases in Antarctica, South America, or the United States. 1. According to these theories and fictional stories, various potential codenames or subclassifications of Nazi UFO craft such as Rundflugzeug, Führerball, Discus, Haunebu, Haunebergdraht, V7, vril, Kugelblitz, not related to the self-propelled anti-aircraft gun of the same name, Andromeda-Drat, Flugkreisel, Kugelwaffe, Jensietsflugmaschine, and Reichsflugzeug have all been referenced. Accounts appear as early as 1950, likely inspired by historical German development of specialized engines such as Victor Schabriger's Repulsine around the time of World War II. Elements of these claims have been widely incorporated into various works of fictional and purportedly non-fictional media, including video games and documentaries, often mixed with more substantiated information. German UFO literature very often conforms largely to documented history on the following points. Nazi Germany claimed the territory of New Swabia in Antarctica, sent an expedition there in 1938, and planned others. 2. Nazi Germany conducted research into advanced propulsion technology, including rocketry, Victor Schabriger's engine research, flying wingcraft and the Arthur-Sack A.S.6 experimental circular winged aircraft. Some UFO sightings during World War II, particularly those known as Foo Fighters, were thought by the Allies to be prototype enemy aircraft designed to harass Allied aircraft through electromagnetic disruption, a technology similar to today's electromagnetic pulse, EMP, weapons. Citation needed.
Well, let me know what you all think, real or fake. Early claims, perhaps we should read this whole thing. Oh, Wiki. CIA Vatican edited encyclopedia article.
Early claims in World War II, the so-called Foo Fighters, a variety of unusual and anomalous aerial phenomena, were witnessed by both Axis and Allied personnel. While some Foo Fighter reports were dismissed as the misperceptions of troops in the heat of combat, others were taken seriously, and leading scientists such as Luis Alvarez began to investigate them. 3-page needed. In at least some cases, Allied intelligence and commanders suspected that Foo Fighters reported in the European theater represented advanced German aircraft or weapons, particularly given that Germans had already developed such technological innovations as V-1 and V-2 rockets and the first operational jet-powered Me-262 fighter planes, and that a minority of Foo Fighters seemed to have inflicted damage to Allied aircraft. 3-page needed. Similar sentiments regarding German technology resurfaced in 1940 saucer reports after Kenneth Arnold's widely reported close encounter with 9 crescent-shaped objects moving at a high velocity. Personnel of Project Sign, the first U.S. Air Force UFO investigation group, noted that the advanced flying wing aeronautical designs of the German Horten brothers were similar to some UFO reports. 4. In 1959, Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, the first head of Project Blue Book, Project Sign's follow-up investigation, wrote, "When WEI ended, the Germans had several radical types of aircraft and guided missiles under development. The majority were in the most preliminary stages, but they were the only known craft that could even approach the performance of objects reported by UFO observers." 5. While these early speculations and reports were limited primarily to military personnel, the earliest assertion of German flying saucers in the mass media appears to have been an article which appeared in the Italian newspaper Il Giornale d'Italia in early 1950. Written by Professor Giuseppe Bellazzo, an Italian scientist and a former Italian Minister of National Economy under the types of flying discs were designed and studied in Germany and Italy as early as 1942 inches. Bellazzo also expressed the opinion that some great power is launching discs to study them. 6. The Bell UFO was among the first flying objects to be connected with the Nazis. Citation needed. It apparently had occult markings on it, and it was also rumored to have been very similar to a Wehrmacht document about a vertical takeoff aircraft. It is directly related to the supposed crash of a bell-shaped object that occurred in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, USA on December 9, 1965. The same month, German engineer Rudolf Schriever gave an interview to German news magazine Der Spiegel in which he claimed that he had designed a craft powered by a circular plan of rotating turbine blades 49 feet, 15 meters, in diameter. He said that the project had been developed by him and his team at BMW's Prague Works until April 1945, when he fled to Czechoslovakia. His designs for the disc and a model were stolen from his workshop in Bremerhaven in 1948, and he was convinced that Czech agents had built his craft for a foreign power. 7-8. In a separate interview with Der Spiegel in October 1952, he said that the plans were stolen from a farm he was hiding in near Regen on May 14, 1945. There are other discs that add to the confusion. 9. However, many skeptics have doubted that such a Bell UFO was actually designed or ever built. 10. In 1953, when Avro Canada announced that it was developing the VZ-9 Avenue Avrocar, a circular jet aircraft with an estimated speed of 1,500 miles per hour, 2,400 kilometers per hour, German engineer Georg Klein claimed that such designs had been developed during the Nazi era. Klein identified 2 types of supposed German flying discs. A non-rotating disc developed at Breslau by V-2 rocket engineer Richard Mayeth, which was captured by the Soviets, while Mayeth fled to the US via France, and ended up working for Avro. A disc developed by Rudolf Schriever and Klaus Habermal at Prague, which consisted of a ring of moving turbine blades around a fixed cockpit. Klein claimed that he had witnessed this craft's first manned flight on February 14, 1945, when it managed to climb to 40,700 feet, in 3 minutes and attained km per hour, 1,400 miles per hour, in level flight. Aeronautical engineer Roy Fedden remarked that the only craft that could approach the capabilities attributed to flying saucers were those being designed by the Germans towards the end of the war. Fedden, who was also chief of the technical mission to Germany for the production, stated in 1945, "I have seen enough of their designs and production plans to realize that if they, the Germans, had managed to prolong the war some months longer, we would have been confronted with a set of entirely new and deadly developments in air warfare." 11. Fedden also added that the Germans were working on a number of very unusual aeronautical projects, though he did not elaborate upon his statement. 12. Later claims The Morning of the Magicians, Le Matin des Magiciens, The Morning of the Magicians, a 1960 book by Louis Pauwels and Jacques Bergier, made many spectacular claims about the Vril Society of Berlin. 13. Several of years later writers, including Jan van Helsing, 1415, Norbert Jürgen Rathofer, 16, and Vladimir Terziski, have built on their work, connecting the Vril Society with UFOs. Among their claims, they imply that the society may have made contact with an alien race and dedicated itself to creating spacecraft to reach the aliens. In partnership with the Thule Society and the Nazi Party, the Vril Society developed a series of flying disc prototypes. With the Nazi defeat, the society allegedly retreated to a base in Antarctica and vanished into the hollow earth to meet up with the leaders of an advanced race inhabiting inner Earth. Ernst Zundell's marketing ploy. Further information, Ernst Zundell section Ufology. When German Holocaust denier Ernst.
Well, I think the hollow earth story is a lie as well, basically, that they have underground cities made with a nuclear power drill called the Subterrane. There are videos about that on YouTube as well. These underground cities but they look horrible. Basically, it's much nicer to live above ground or in other places. So I still think that it's best to prevent mutually assured destruction. And however, who knows if there will be an asteroid crash or whatever is going to happen. There is time-traveling AI, so we can do something about it. If there's really something horrible, then it should warn us anyway, so that we can think of ways to survive it. If it doesn't know a way, perhaps we can think of one. Anyway, let's continue reading the wiki Nazi_UFOs story article.
Zundell started Samizdat Publishers in the 1970s. He initially catered to the ufology community, which was then at its peak of public acceptance. His books claimed that flying saucers were Nazi secret weapons launched from an underground base in Antarctica, from which the Nazis hoped to conquer the Earth and possibly the planets. 17. Zundell also sold, for $9,999, seats on an exploration team to locate the polar entrance to the hollow Earth. 18. Some who interviewed Zundell claim that he privately admitted it was a deliberate hoax to build publicity for Samizdat, although he still defended it as late as 2002. 1920. Miguel Serrano's book. In 1978, Miguel Serrano, a Chilean diplomat and Nazi sympathizer, published El Cordón Dorado, Hitlerismo Esotérico, The Golden Thread, Esoteric Hitlerism, in Spanish, in which he claimed that Adolf Hitler was an avatar of Vishnu and was, at that time, communing with Hyperborean gods in an underground Antarctic base in New Swabia. Serrano predicted that Hitler would lead a fleet of UFOs from the base to establish the Fourth Reich. 21. In popular culture, this alleged UFO fleet is referred to as the Nazi flying saucers from Antarctica. Citation needed.
Well, I want to keep clear that Nazi Hitler was evil because of his imperialism, dictatorialism, and totalitarianism. Because the idea is creating a perfect society, not a totalitarian, communistic, negative dystopian, Orwellian nightmare. And fascism is one of the worst forms of government. So to keep it clear, I'm not a Nazi and I'm anti-fascism. Also because of racism, homophobia. But the main thing is the totalitarianism. Hitler was also pursuing the New World Order, Neuordnung, Third Reich, remember? So, and that's what some people are pursuing to this very day. And many of these people were people that aided and abetted the Nazis. I've talked about the Bilderbergers, the Rockefellers. The Rockefellers aiding and abetting the Nazis, even funding the work of Dr. Joseph Mengele. And now they have their tracing plans. RockefellerFoundation.org.
Richard Chase. According to a 1979 interview conducted by FBI agent Robert Ressler, imprisoned serial killer Richard Chase believed or claimed to believe due to his schizophrenia that Nazi UFOs had extorted him into committing his murders under threat to his own life. Chase further claimed that prison officials in league with the Nazis were poisoning his food, and he asked Ressler to provide him with a radar gun, with which he could apprehend his enemies. On December 26, 1980, Chase was found dead in his cell. An autopsy found that he committed suicide with an overdose of prescribed antidepressants that he had saved over several weeks. In popular culture in 1947, Robert A. Heinlein published Rocket Ship Galileo, a science fiction novel featuring a German moon base. In the 1960 Sexton Blake story The World Shakers, a clandestine group of scientists make use of Nazi-design plot to brainwash key individuals and create a united world government. Robert Trenken's novel 1996 features Hitler and a group of Nazis escaping the end of the war to the future in a time machine. They attempt the subtle takeover of Earth through media manipulation until their time machine is used against them. The History Network program Ancient Aliens, 2010, has featured episodes about Nazi UFOs and Nazi UFO conspiracy theories. Unsealed Alien Files, 2011 to 2015. 2012, a science fiction black comedy about Nazis who left Earth from their hidden base in Antarctica and established a secret fortress on the dark side of the moon. After Germany's defeat in 1945, the Nazis vowed to return to Earth in peace, and they finally returned, but with a full invasion force of flying saucers in order to finally defeat the Allies and restore Nazi Germany. During their invasion, they end up battling with the President of the United States, Sarah Palin, and unintentionally cause a worldwide nuclear war when every spacefaring nation on Earth lays claim to the Nazis' powerful helium-3 resources on the moon. Iron Sky, Invasion, 2012, a video game space combat simulator and an expansion of the 2012 movie, with interactive and flyable recreations of numerous alleged prototypes and models of Nazi UFO spacecraft. Francisco Ortega's novel El Verbo Caveman, Caveman Verb, 2014, Caveman Verb, 2014, describes a Nazi haunebu UFO found by the main character, Paul Caveman. The craft is described as a copy of a Vimana and is later used by Paul to travel through time. In the video game Wolfenstein 2017, UFOs are used for space travel, and the Resistance successfully manages to steal one of them when they sent Blazkowicz to Venus. Iron Sky, The Coming Race, 2019, a Finnish-German comic science fiction action film, the sequel to Var and Sola's 2012 film Iron Sky. Its production was crowdfunded through Indiegogo. Like its predecessor, the film mixes political themes with repeated allusions to the popular culture and various conspiracy theories, but is generally more action-adventure oriented. A major inspiration of the content, and title, is the vril conspiracy theory. The Lemon Demons song Touchtone Telephone briefly mentions Nazi UFO conspiracy theories in the line Space Nazis, Robert Stack.
And then there's this article on teslaresearch.jimdowfree.com. The Nazi flying saurcers, misspelled. under construction. So this is highly dubious stuff. So perhaps they do have anti-gravity crafts, but none can sustain human life in outer space, is my theory. So there are other possibilities, it's just a theory.
Under construction. The Nazi flying saurcers. The contents of this section are added progressively as a result of the research around the internet and with the objective to find some details and coincidences to try to get any conclusion. For this reason the information doesn't need to have any relation between each other. http://www.genart.tu/wonder/wonder.htnish SSE4 GRU Revolutionary Electromagnetic Gravity Motor. It was an improvement on Marin Kaplan Hans Kohler's energy machine by connecting it to a power converter, which can then be coupled to a Van de Graaff band generator, which in turn should be connected to a Marconi vortex dynamo, a spherical tank mercury, to create powerful rotating electromagnetic fields that can abolish or reduce gravity. The electromagnetic gravitational engine was called Thule Trieb work because the physical work on the design, manufacture and test of the engine was subject to company Thule, who had worked with similar research projects, which had designed a disc-shaped aircraft that were ideal for installation by such an engine. The engineer Thule had designed a disc-shaped craft, flying saucer, which he believed would be driven by an electromagnetic gravity motor. Since 1935, the Thule had been looking for a remote, insignificant, uninhabited area, which could act as a testing ground for the development of such a vessel in secret. Thule had found such a suitable place, a larger bore, in the middle of forests in northwestern Germany. The area description Hauneburg, as the area was previously owned by a farmer family who had plans to establish a large commercial farm and a sawmill in the area named Hauneburg. However, it was the family for unknown reasons perished, and the area was deserted and without any proclaimed owners. The only access to the area was a winding forest road through the woods. The area was so remote and desolate that it was not on the official map of Germany. In creating this test area and its facilities in 1937, then called the SSE4, the new Thule vehicle Hauneburg Drat or just Hauneburg. In the area were built garages and a landing strip for aircraft. From the air as this, however, completely uninteresting out, and you had very close from the air before you could see that there was a potential landing strip for aircraft. The area was, however, not discovered by the Allies at any time during the war. For security reasons and for further disclosure of the location during the war, so was the name of the location and the products in 1939 shortened to haunebu. Everything was done in total secrecy, and there was death penalty for leaking information outside the group. Haunebu I. The first haunebu in prototypes, two of which were built under the leadership of Victor Schaberger, who was an engineer at the aircraft manufacturer Dornier, was 25 feet in diameter, had a crew of 8 men and could achieve the theoretical incredible initial velocity of 4,000 km/h, but this only at low altitude. Further enhancement enabled the machine to reach a theoretical speed of up to 17,000 km/h. Flight duration could be up to a maximum of 18 hours. To resist the incredible temperatures that occur at these speeds through the air, was a special garment called Victolin developed by SS metallurgists to both Haunebu series and later the vril series of flying saucers. Kraftstrahlkanon, KSK. SS also developed a ray gun on an experimental basis to the vessel, which got its energy from Trieb work engine. This was the double-barreled 60mm Kraftstrahlkanon, KSK. It was an electromagnetic beam cannon that sent concentrated loads of electromagnetism in the left direction. The idea was that when such a concentrated load hit a conventional enemy aircraft, they would charge, generating large electrical currents in the aircraft wiring, such as would lead to the aircraft and radios would be destroyed and that the aircraft Benson motor would stop because of seized ignition coils. Many have after the war described these guns as laser guns. However, there was no question of laser guns. Laser guns emit concentrated amounts of energy in the form of light that burns a hole in the affected object. The energy for such a cannon requires large amounts of electricity from power generators, which are typically powered by an internal combustion engine, and haunebu vessels are not available. SS also developed laser guns, but for the use of a vessel with a Triebwerk engine was more appropriate to utilize some of all the electromagnetism which Triebwerk engine created. The early models of the gun was a fairly large and heavy plant, which haunebu I showed himself incapable to carry. Moreover, it is never clear whether it did for the Germans to develop a ray gun that any of RFC vessels could carry. Haunebu 2. In 1942 the improved Haunebu 2, with a diameter of 26 meters, ready for flight testing. This disc had a crew of 9 people and could theoretically achieve overleadsflygninger between 6,000 to 21,000 kilometers, each with a flight time of up to 55 hours. Haunebu 2 was subsequently subjected to numerous alterations, experiments and improvements in the period 1943 to 1944 under the assistance of engineers from Dornier Aircraft Factory. The diameter of the vessel was notably increased to 32 meters, so the vessel could accommodate up to 20 people, and this vessel was named Haunebu 2 Dustra, Dornier Stratosphärenflugzeug. 7 of these vessels were built, making a total of 106 test flights. In late 1944 announced Dornier that they had finally created the perfect war model called Dustamized, and the final model was built. The theoretically achievable speed would be over 21,000 kilometers, h. New management. After the attempted coup against Hitler on July 20, 1944, Valkyrie, as SS Obersturmbannführer Otto Skorzeny greatly helped to prevent, as was Otto Skorzeny of Hitler given responsibility for the administration of Nazi Germany's secret retaliation weapon. This meant that Otto Skorzeny got unlimited funds to manage the development. He was a direct link between Hitler and the scientists involved in total secrecy to develop new weapons. This all took place in secret and outside the normal chain of command. Not even the Abwehr SD know what was going on. SS sent a request for the mass production of this model, Haunebu 2, Dustra, to aircraft manufacturers Junkers and Dornier. Both aircraft manufacturers came up with their offer, but in late 1944 or early 1945 Dornier was chosen as the supplier. However, did war development in the spring of 1945 it impossible for Dornier achieving produce any operational versions of Haunebu 2, Dustra, at their plant. Instead, it was all traces meticulously destroyed by the SS in order to ensure that these secrets would not fall into Allied hands. Haunebu 3. In parallel, Dornier development under the leadership of SSE-4 unit designed successor to Haunebu 2, namely Haunebu 3. A single prototype was manufactured and tested in Hauneburg in the war's final months. Haunebu 3 was a giant flying saucer. It was 71 feet in diameter, could accommodate 32 people and had an SH. The body of this vessel consisted first of a 3-layer Victylin. The vessel would tow 8 as could. 19 test flights were conducted with this vessel. When the Americans approached Hauneburg, the vessel was separated and transported eastward toward Berlin, and all traces of Hauneburg was the SS minutely deleted. SS had given Hauneburg in northwestern Germany as a test facility for the flying saucers, and moved east to the secret vril aircraft manufacturer's test facilities in Brandenburg, north of Berlin. Vril was the airplane factory, which manufactured the advanced responsibility for the preparation of the operational flying saucers. Haunebu 3 was thus transferred from the SSE-4 device to Vril's management. It was an absolutely urgent task because the Russian troops were on their way from the east. Vril 7, Haunebu 3. After the transfer of the vessel, the name was changed from Haunebu 3 to Vril 7. They succeeded engineer Vril to clarify the transferred operational vessel operation at the last minute before the Russians arrived. This vessel was used for the removal of, inter alia, engineers Thule and Vril in March 1945. The operation was called Istara after the old Germanic goddess of the East, dawn, rebirth and resurrection. However, there were too many people and equipment on board the vessel. One of the passengers was SS Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler. The congested Haunebu 3, Vril 7, was boosted up in the air by using a cluster A9 and, or A10 rockets to the vessel in the air. Vril 7 was shot down by the Russians, and all aboard were killed. All debris was subsequently rescued by the Russians and by the time totally kept secret to the SS records show that on board the Vril 7 found both oxygen generators and modified triggerwork at Trike-Dragged. This has led to speculation about whether the SS had plans to fly to the moon and build a secret base on the moon's backside. Maybe SS had hopes of including to fly Adolf Hitler to safety. However, there are no sources that corroborate these rumors.
Well, way too cold. Like Mars is way too cold for colonization, and nuking it would not change the temperature. Perhaps temporarily, but its position in the solar system would remain the same, so it would be minus 63 Celsius on average.
Haunebu 4. After the war, one of the vril factory found hidden plans to build a haunebu 4 with a diameter of 120 meters, but it is known with reasonable certainty that at this plant was built such a vessel before the end of the war, as the SS has been more active in the destruction of all tracks, rather than reinforce a production of this model.
Okay, I'm drinking some tea. My camera is not working anymore. Well then, let's see if I can switch it off for the outro and check if there are remarks. Thank you guys for your chat remarks. Alex Fox wrote about TR3b, an Earth-like planet, I asked, and he wrote TR3b. TR3-B is an aircraft of Black Project. The patent is out. Okay, that may be interesting because I see these triangle-shaped planes, basically, Cancer-Crossing Tachinators planes. And the Tachinator is another thing people can study online. But since I've adjusted the bitrate and it's not going up during this broadcast, I think I'm not going to make this broadcast too long. Perhaps I'll make another broadcast about this, but it has